Okay. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. Welcome, and thank you for everyone who's managed to come for this special edition time brown bag. I'm excited to be introducing Kelly Ferber this morning, who is going to be presenting her mid-candidature review. As some of you might know, I've been on maternity leave for the first 6 months of this year, and I've been astounded to return to just an incredible amount of work achieved by Kelly while I've been gone. It's really interesting work and really useful to the field, and I'm really looking forward to her presenting it all to you today. So over to you, Kelly.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Emma, and thanks, Alex. I'll just get my slides up. All right. Well, thanks for joining me this morning for my mid-candidature review. Firstly, just a really big thank you to all of my supervisors for their ongoing support, and also everyone who has contributed to the project. It's a really interesting project, and I'm really lucky to have the team around it that I do. So my project is called Aspirations Across Time. Do aspiration orientations at childhood predict midlife aspirations and well-being? So today I'll be presenting the results from my first 2 studies, my plans moving forward for study 3 and study 4, and then finishing with looking at my timeline and any questions. So I'd like to start by reflecting on aspirations and thinking about questions such as, where do they come from? And why do they matter? Do we step out into the world one day, teddy bear in hand, and suddenly decide, this is what's important to me? This is how I want to spend my time and energy. And this is what I will aspire toward. And even if we were to have such an epiphany, how would we know that this pathway would lead to well-being? There's little research on the significance of childhood aspirations. For example, we don't know whether there's an association between the types of aspirations that we orient toward at childhood and the aspirations that we go on to have later in life, and whether the aspirations that we're orienting towards as children could impact our well-being later in life. Additionally, more research is required to understand the ways in which aspirations come to develop and how individual factors and parent factors play a role. So in order to explain how I aim to address these gaps, I'd like to first highlight the theoretical perspectives I'll be drawing upon. So firstly, the primary theory I'll be drawing on is self-determination theory. More specifically, SDT's mini theory called goal contents theory, which I'll go into more detail next. Second, lifespan development, which entails that development occurs across the entire lifespan. So looking at patterns of goal engagement across time offers a lot of information about adaptive functioning and well-being. And I also identify the parent-child system as an influential system that has the potential to impact upon aspirations of children through mechanisms such as attachment, observational learning, and parent style. So goal contents theory indicates that not all goals are created equal, for the content of people's goals and life pursuits affects their integration and wellness. So goals differ in the extent to which they satisfy basic psychological needs of autonomy, relatedness, and competence, and then in turn, well-being. Goal contents theory identifies 2 main types of aspirations. There's intrinsic aspirations, which are inherently more aligned with the satisfaction of basic psychological needs and include affiliation, personal growth, community, and physical well-being. Intrinsic aspirations have been repeatedly found to be associated with numerous measures of well-being, such as vitality, self-actualization, self-esteem, and many more. Then there are extrinsic aspirations, which are dependent on external contingencies and include aspirations that are centred around wealth, image, and fame, and at best indirectly satisfy basic psychological needs. And extrinsic aspirations, when prioritised at the cost of intrinsic aspirations, have even been found to be linked with ill-being. So research has consistently provided support for these 2 aspiration types and their differential links to well-being. But as I highlighted earlier, there's less research on the development of aspirations, as well as the stability of aspiration orientations over time, and how this relates to wellbeing. So my thesis aims to address these gaps in the following ways. So study 1 is a systematic review of parent factors that are linked with child aspirations. Study 2 involves evaluating the validity of a range of coding systems used to code aspirations in qualitative free text essays. For study 3, I'll be using the coding system from study 2 to code aspirational data from a longitudinal data set in which the same individuals wrote about their aspirations at age 11 and then at age 50. So I'll then analyse the stability of the aspirations over time, and then in study 4, how different patterns of aspiring over time are related to wellbeing. So we'll first take a look at the results for study 1, which was a systematic review looking into which parent factors foster intrinsic and extrinsic aspirations. So to be included in the review, studies needed to have at least one parent factor and to have measured child's aspirations using one of the versions of the aspiration index. So I wanted to keep the concept of parent factor quite broad to encompass the array of possible influences. So parent factors may encompass individual factors to do with the parent themselves, such as their own aspirations, SES, education, their own wellbeing. And then there's the parent style, so whether parents offer environments which have a lot of warmth and the child feels a sense of relatedness. Do they provide structure that facilitates experiences of competence? And do they allow a child to have choices and experiences of self-direction that support a sense of autonomy? Or do they offer environments that are high in control, that hold little space for understanding the child's feelings or perspectives, or have a chaotic structure? And parents may even have contingent self-esteem in which their own self-esteem hinges on their child's achievements and aspirational pursuits. So I followed the PRISMA guidelines and searched in databases including PsycInfo and ERIC. I also used a bidirectional search strategy and contacted the SDT community to acquire all relevant articles. So there was 2 screeners who considered the articles for inclusion, and we utilised AS Review for the title and abstract screening. And after the full text screening phase, we identified 18 articles for inclusion. So to analyse the findings, I used a multi-level structural equation modelling approach using the MetaSem package in R. Effect sizes are in the form of correlations. And I used the effect size magnitudes from Funder and Oza to interpret the size of the correlations. So using an SDT framework and drawing upon the parenting literature, I developed 5 hypotheses. So the first hypothesis was that parent extrinsic aspirations would be positively associated with child extrinsic aspirations. And the pooled effect size for hypothesis 1A was found to be large. Also hypothesised that parent intrinsic aspirations would be positively associated with child intrinsic aspirations. And the pooled effect size for hypothesis 1B was found to be medium. Hypothesis 2 predicted that need-supportive parenting styles would be positively associated with intrinsic aspirations. So the SDT literature suggests that the satisfaction of all 3 psychological needs lend to the development of intrinsic aspirations, as it facilitates alignment with one's inner compass and the adoption of values deemed healthier for optimal functioning. So the pooled effect size for hypothesis 2 was found to be medium. However, there was a moderator effect for the specific parent style. So we found that the biggest effect occurred when satisfaction of all 3 needs, autonomy, relatedness and competence, was reported by the child. Hypothesis 3 predicted that need thwarting styles would be positively associated with extrinsic aspirations. So when need satisfaction is thwarted, children may look outward for a sense of satisfaction, adopting extrinsic life goals. So the pooled effect size for hypothesis 3 was found to be small. And again, it was significantly moderated by the specific parent style. So we found that the biggest effects occurred for environments in which there was overindulgence, providing too many privileges, clothes and toys. So hypothesis 4 predicted that parent factors embodying greater stress would be positively associated with child extrinsic aspirations. Family stress theory indicates that greater stress can contribute to parents adopting more controlling parenting styles. And as previously mentioned, controlling parent styles may contribute to thwarting of need satisfaction, which may see children orienting toward extrinsic aspirations. So I didn't find many effect sizes for this hypothesis, so I didn't pull the effects together. But from what I did find, there was some very small support for parenting factors embodying greater stress being associated with child extrinsic aspirations. And the last hypothesis was that parent contingent self-esteem would be positively related to child extrinsic aspirations. So when a child hinges their own self-esteem on their child's accomplishments and success, they've been found to adopt more controlling parent styles and offer conditional regard. So that's when a parent offers regard, affection and love for their child primarily at the times that they're behaving or embodying what the parent values. So the SDT literature identifies parent conditional regard as a key factor in the socialisation process in which the children then come to look to external contingencies for feelings of worth. And it may also see children adopting the identities that their parent desire in order to maintain relatedness with their parent. So I didn't find any studies that met the criteria for inclusion for this hypothesis. But it's interesting, of the literature that is out there, there's a study called Raising Trophy Kids by Sonens and others in 2015, and they found that children feel more pressured to aspire extrinsically when their mothers are higher in child invested contingent self-esteem. So taken together, there's a small amount of research in this area, and my review explored the patterns of associations that do exist. We need more longitudinal research to provide insights surrounding causality and to better understand the mechanisms occurring. If support is continued to be provided for the patterns that we're seeing, it would suggest that would support the idea that the development of intrinsic and extrinsic aspirations should be treated separately. If we reflect back to why this matters, if we're trying to promote well-being, we want to try to foster higher levels of intrinsic aspiring relative to extrinsic aspiring. So practically, a primary goal for parents in fostering intrinsic aspirations would be to support children's psychological need satisfaction. And primary goals in supporting parents to minimise extrinsic aspirations would be working with parents to understand their own relationships with extrinsic aspirations and minimise environments which might be overindulgent, harsh or controlling in structure or chaotic. So the research did primarily involve self-report in adolescents. Some studies have started to explore pre-adolescence, but the review really does confirm that there is a gap in the research regarding children's aspirations. And this may partly be due to that there's not a method to explore children's aspirations if they're too young to complete an aspiration index. So study 2 partly aims to address this gap by looking at goal expression in naturally occurring language. So study 2 actually came about from a suggestion from my confirmation of candidature. So I proposed the use of a coding system that would allow me to determine the aspiration orientations in the participants' essays from the National Child Development Study, who wrote about their aspirations both at age 11 and age 50. So it was suggested that in order to evaluate whether the coding system would be effective at identifying aspiration orientations within essays, that I could conduct a pilot study with adults and ask them to complete both the aspiration index and write an essay about their aspirations, and then see if the intrinsic and extrinsic aspirations identified by the coding system were related to that found in the aspiration index. But rather than just trial one coding system, I decided it would be a good opportunity to evaluate and compare the utility of several systems. So the pilot study aims to evaluate 3 coding systems designed to assess the intrinsic and extrinsic quality of aspirations as expressed in free text essays and determine their validity in relation to the aspiration index. So first I gained approval from ethics, and the study involved 209 individuals from the United States, ages ranging between 18 to 84. Participants were recruited online through Qualtrics and were asked to complete a 20-minute questionnaire which involved completing the aspiration index and the small piece of writing about their aspirations in the future, as well as a variety of demographic measures including education, employment, objective SES and subjective SES. I then selected and developed 3 coding systems to trial. One was computer auto-generated and 2 were human-rated coding systems. Firstly, the text search system involved developing a range of keywords that we expected individuals who aspire in each of the aspirational domains would use. So I collaborated with a group of STT researchers who checked the list and added any additional terms. And then I used in vivo text search function to identify the number of times each of the terms were used within the essays and generated an intrinsic and extrinsic word count for each participant. So an example of what this looks like in an essay, the words that are highlighted are simply the words that in vivo screened for based on the dictionary that I provided. So of the human-rated systems, the first is called the count system. This one is based on a system used in a study by Bradshaw and others in 2015. So the count system allocates counts based on each aspiration type and the frequency with which the goal type was mentioned by each participant. So an example of what this looks like in the same essay I showed before, the individual would receive 3 counts in the domain of wealth as they made 3 comments surrounding this. I want to be financially stable. I hope to one day get out of poverty, and I want to live without a worry of money. They would receive 2 counts for personal growth for the comments, I hope my life ends up being how I want it to be, and I want to enjoy my life and live it up how I always wanted it to be. And then 1 count for affiliation, for mentioning family. And the last is the thematic system. This system was formulated after a suggestion that came out of my confirmation of candidature last year, which was to consider being more specific in coding for the aspirational content. So the thematic system involves counting the presence of 3 key themes for each of the 7 aspirational domains found in the aspiration index. So here's an example of the 3 themes for the wealth domain. It offers a graded approach to coding in which there's a ceiling score of a possible 3 counts if all 3 key themes are present. So here's the same essay coded by the thematic system. It would only receive 1 count for wealth for meeting the key theme of the presence of a comment surrounding money, and 1 count for personal growth relating to the presence of the theme autonomy, and 1 count for affiliation. So we had 3 coders trained in the human rating systems, including Emma, Sophia and myself, and the level of enthusiasm depicted in the pictures is an accurate reflection of how much enthusiasm and commitment both Emma and Sophia have provided throughout this process. But beyond this, Emma and Sophia are both SDT researchers with expertise in goal contents. But to enhance our inter-rater reliability, we also went through several steps in which we coded the same essays. So I used the intra-class correlation to evaluate inter-rater reliability. These are the scores in which all of us coded the same 50 essays, and we were able to reach sufficient levels of inter-rater reliability. In order to assess for validity, I used a linear mixed effects model approach with the rater as a random effect. So the results showed that for intrinsic aspirations, the thematic count system demonstrated the highest level of validity. And in terms of extrinsic aspirations, the count system demonstrated the highest level of validity in relation to the aspiration index. But if we had to pick one unified system moving forward, I'd pick the thematic system, as it offers a similar level of validity across both aspiration types. It also yields the strongest inter-rater reliability and is closely tied to the underpinnings of the aspiration index. So moving forward, I'll be using the thematic coding system for study 3 and 4. So study 3 aims to assess the stability of aspirations over time, and then study 4, how these pathways of aspiring relate to wellbeing using the data from the National Child Development Study. So I hope this project will aid in providing a greater understanding about the significance of childhood aspirations, the trajectory of aspirations over time, and inform us on how to best support children's aspirations and parenting strategies to ultimately provide a life of meaning and wellness. Okay, so moving forward with my timeline, I guess the focus so far has been more so on the systematic review and the pilot study. Now that I do have a coding system that I can move forward with the longitudinal study, the focus will be on studies 3 and 4. So I'm aiming to finish the coding of the essays throughout the rest of this year and into early next year. I'd like to start to be able to analyse the data, continue writing the chapters for my thesis, and then submission in February 2023. So that's it. Thank you. Go to questions.
Thank you, Katie.